Okay, so we've got a number of attendees joined now, so we'll crack on with the presentation. I'm John Kelly. I'm the MD here at Wood for Trees. I'd just like to welcome you all to the webinar this morning. This is a really sort of momentous moment for us here at Wood for Trees. We've been planning this for a number of years now, developing our Insight Hub platform, developing the benchmarking capabilities. So it's a really great point in time to be able to sort of announce this, release the report to the sector, which we hope will be very beneficial, and give people access, to that data, to that information, and allow them to really truly look at how their performance compares to the sector as a whole, and also to just understand the trends and things that are going on within the sector. Obviously, increasingly important at this time with the pandemic and the situation last year, which had massive impact on many areas of fundraising, as we'll see through the report. So before I take you through the report and take you through the benchmarking portal and show you how we've got to those figures, I'm going to hand over for a minute to Josh, who's our product manager on Insight Hub, and is going to talk to you a little bit more about the background and how we pulled this all together. So over to you, Josh.
Hey, morning everyone. So yeah, as John said, I'm Josh. I'm the product manager for Insight Hub. Before we start, I just want to say we are going to do a Q&A at the end of this. So if you look on the right hand side of your screen, or some of you will be on the bottom, there's a little chat box and there's also a question box. If you just drop any questions you might have in there as we go along, we'll try and fire through as many of those as we can at the end of this. So kind of the structure for this webinar, I'm going to quickly run you through iHub at kind of a top level, describe a little bit about our new benchmarking functionality. John's going to walk you through an executive summary, and then he's also going to take you through how he actually found the insights that he's going to run through. So yeah, Insight Hub, or iHub as we call it internally, is Wood for Trees' online reporting, benchmarking and insights portal. It compiles, visualizes and democratizes industry-leading insights for charitable organizations like yours, who might be looking to boost supporter engagement or maximize the return on your fundraising activities. We currently have 15 reports with 44 pages of insight, covering 10 million supporters and their 140 million transactions. So there's a lot of data in there at the moment. So how does Insight Hub work? At a very high level, we take data from your CRM systems, either through extraction or file uploads. We run this data through a series of transformations to categorize and aggregate into our core data model. And then we extract insights from this transformed data and render them to you via an online portal, enabling you to share these insights across your whole organization at any time. All of this provides us with the opportunity to quickly and efficiently deliver industry-leading reports directly to any of our clients. Currently, the reports are grouped into 5 bundles, which I'll just run through now. We've got our overview bundle, which is a top-level view of your supporter base with the ability to drill down into detailed analysis of your customers and income trends. We've got our supporter engagement bundle, which allows you to gain a deeper understanding of your supporter activity in relation to engagement, retention, and cross-sell. We've got our value bundle, which will allow you to see how supporter value is spread across your organization and who your key donors are. Our campaign bundle, which will allow you to closely monitor the performance of your campaign and channel activity. And finally, we've got our legacy bundle, more specific to legacy teams and departments, which will allow you to gain a deeper understanding of your legacy pipeline performance and supporter behavior. And kind of integral to this webinar, we've got benchmarking that sits across the top of all of that. We currently offer benchmarking for the overview bundle, which is what John will be going through today. And later this month, we'll be rolling out our supporter engagement benchmarks with the rest of the bundle benchmarks to follow throughout 2021. If you do want any more specific information on any of the reports, get in touch with the team. We've also got a little bit of information and some screenshots on the website as well. So if I briefly run you through the overview benchmarking report itself and the pages within it. All data is sourced directly from charity CRM systems and run through Wood for Trees CCDM, where it's processed and transformed to render accurate, repeatable, and comparable insights through iHub. As part of this process, we anonymize and aggregate the key metrics for our benchmarking data sets. All users on the platform are then able to safely and securely compare their own performance against that of the wider sector. So this is our recruitment page, which will give you a kind of a 4-year overview of recruitment activity by product and channel. Then we've got our income page, which is essentially the same thing, but for income across those years. Our contactability page allows you to gauge how your supporters' contact permissions stand in comparison to the market. Our supporter profiles page lets you see the makeup of your supporter base and how that compares. We've got our location page, which visualizes how your supporters are spread across the country against the market and also the general population index. We've got supporter trends, which will allow you to compare how your supporter numbers have tracked against the market year by year or quarter and month as well. And then finally, we've got our income trends, which will allow you to compare income against previous periods to date or as a measure against the total. And this will allow you to understand how these vary by product and channel. So this is essentially what John's going to be running you through today. But before he does, he's going to walk you through the executive summary, the kind of high-level findings that we've come away with. So I'll hand back over to you now, John.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, as we just said, a lot of you will have already received the full report, hopefully, and you'll obviously have read it avidly and know everything that I'm about to tell you. But for those of you that didn't have time for that, then yeah, just a quick flick through some of the main things that we've come across through delving into this data. So the first point, overall, see a reasonably positive picture given the state of the sector, well, and the whole economy last year. Income was down about 23% overall, but if we exclude legacies from that, we see a drop of just around 8%. Legacies, I think it's been well reported that there's been delays in the processing of those legacies, so I wanted to remove those really to get a sort of better comparison of where we are. So, you know, reasonably promising result, I think, given the situation that we found ourselves in last year. And through that, if we delve down into product level, there were some winners and obviously losers within that. So community fundraising was down 1/3, and that's obvious reasons, with events, you know, coming to a halt as they did. But we did see some uptick towards the end of the year as people got more sort of ready with digital events and so on. There's a lot of engagements through that. Conversely, one-off giving actually was one of the big winners, and actually we saw an increase of around 50% across the sector from one-off giving, driven probably through a lot of the emergency appeals that went out in sort of Q2, Q3 this year, which really drove up that giving. But it showed that people still wanted to give, and we're looking for different ways and channels with which to give in. We also saw an increase in the number of supporters engaging through one-off giving, so that's really interesting to see that come through. And actually a similar thing on community fundraising. So although income was down, because of this engagement that we saw towards the end of the year, overall, the number of active supporters giving through community fundraising was up 25% by the end of the year. Now, the big loser, probably as part of all that, was regular giving, and that's, I think, largely down to the face-to-face element. Many programs that we're looking at are driven largely by face-to-face recruitment, and that sort of really faltered. So overall regular giving income was down, and the number of supporters giving through regular giving also fell across the year. Onto some more sort of demographic and contact information. We did see some small changes in the types of people giving. So interestingly, overall, we saw increased recruitment from retirees, from middle income bands, and even more from women. Interestingly, we all know that the charity sector is very skewed towards female giving, and that was sort of emphasised through last year. But again, once we drill down into more detail, we see some differences and some other things come out from that. So actually, with the one-off donations and the increase that I talked about earlier in that was very much driven by an increase in men giving through those methods. And community fundraising was quite an interesting one to look at. There's a really quite a stark increase in change in the profile of people giving through fundraising, and looking at more retired people and a lower income band. So that I found that quite interesting, and possibly due to the change onto sort of more digital platforms that opened up a very different audience that could engage and give in that way. And then a couple of points on contactability. So as Josh has taken you through the reports there, one of the key ones that we've got is understanding how able you are to contact your supporters. That's both a function of their permissions that they're giving you, but also gathering the means to make those communications, so email addresses, phone numbers, etc. And we did see a small increase in the number of email and phone opportunities that you have to contact supporters going forward. A final point, though, that actually, despite the increasing engagement in community fundraising, there were lower contactability rates for people being brought in through these digital channels. And interestingly, that was for email and for phone as well. So I guess it's a slight note of caution that the increased engagement is great, but do we have then the ability to contact, nurture, and engage those supporters going forward and take them on their on those all-important supporter journeys? So hopefully that's interesting. A few sort of key takeouts that we took from that, and you'll see those in the reports. I'm now going to switch over to the Insight Hub platform and show you some of that information in a little bit more detail, and how we came across that information. So hopefully you can all see the benchmark screen now. I'm actually going to start off with the income trends report, which shows you comparison of income from this year against last year. And you'll see there that for the benchmark, we were down 23% on the previous year. Now, what you also get with the benchmark report is the ability to see your own results in context against that benchmark. So in this case, I can see for this fictional charity that actually my results were down as well, but not quite as much as the sector as a whole. But as I said, legacy was a big part of that. So using the filters here, I'm able to sort of take legacy out of that equation. And there we can see, as I said, overall picture down 8% on the year. And actually for my charity, I did well. So that's great to know that, you know, I've increased income and increased against the sector. At the bottom of the screen, you'll also notice that we break that down by charity, and you can see those winners and losers that I talked about earlier. So one-off donations up almost 50% on previous years. Community fundraising, as I said, down a third, although some positives around that, and you can see sort of also regular giving there also being down as I said. Using the filters here, we can also drill into those individually and see the sort of profile over the year. So if I look at one-off donation, it's a little bit, you can kind of see it on this chart here, but you'll see a sort of spike in donations through sort of April, May as those emergency appeals went out, and then a little bit of a bump again at the end of the year, which we would typically see through Christmas appeals. And again, I can see that sort of monitored in my own results, and actually I can see that, you know, I was very well up on in terms of one-off donations. Conversely, if we look at community fundraising, and I flick over to those, you can see sort of a real sort of slow increase in those beginning months, both in the sector and my own results, and then that real steep climb towards the end of the year. Another thing I didn't touch on at the front, but sort of worth noting was high value giving. That overall remained fairly similar, actually down for the sector, down 4%. But if I drill into the detail of high value giving, I can see some elements of that, and actually that seems to be driven by an increase in major donors, so individual philanthropy and generosity really coming through, but a slight drop in corporate giving, I guess, as you know, commercial organisations also felt the pinch of the pandemic. But being able to see those in context, you can see, you know, how the sector is performing as a whole, and then how do your results measure up against that. So that's the income side of things. I also want to look a little bit at the recruitment side. So if I drill into here on the recruitment benchmark, and I actually see the profile back a few years. I've focused in the report on 2019 versus 2020, but you can also see here the longer term trend. Now you'll notice the filters on the left here. I've actually drilled into some of the key channels and products because I really wanted to focus on those. And what we see here really is you can again see the positive impact on one-off donations in 2020 compared to 2019. And if you look at that longer term trend, you'll see the income has come down, but then shot up again. And you can also see, you know, community fundraising doing well there. I can also switch to my channel view and again look at that longer term trend. So I see a real boost in 2020 in digital across the sector. Interestingly, that, you know, for the previous 3 years, it remained fairly flat, potentially some small growth there, but we really have seen, you know, the acceleration of digital through the pandemic. You can see here direct mail coming back. Again, we see that big drop off over the last few years, but suddenly that's resurrected itself. And we can see the increase in events income coming through. From a supporter perspective, we can also look at the supporter trends report, which gives me an idea not just of recruitment, but how the overall file size is performing. So what I'm interested, again, this shows us that the sort of route back for the last 4 years, but by sliding on the years here and drilling into the quarter, I can really see what happened over last year. And I can see here across the sector that real increase in recruitment in the latter half of the year, which actually mean, you know, we end up the year with more active supporters than we had at the beginning. And I can see that mirrored in my own results over here, although clearly I didn't do so well as the sector in Q3. perhaps I was a bit slower off the mark, or trying to do something in that period. Again, we can drill down into specific products around that. So looking at community fundraising, I can really see that spike in recruitment and engagement in Q3, slightly less in Q4, but really driving that growth in the overall file size. And if I look at one-off donations, again, similarly, I see growth in the file, but actually that was seen by a real boost in activity in Q2, as I mentioned, all those emergency campaigns earlier. On the regular giving side of things, I've got a number of different regular giving products. I'm not going to go through them all. I've selected here sponsorship just as an example to show how we see that decline in the overall file size. It's really dropped a bit over the year, and really because of a real fall in recruitment in Q2. Right, so that's my income supporter recruitment covered. I also, as we noted in the key takes out, we had a little bit of look at demographics on the file and contactability as well, which I'll come to in a minute. Now on the demographics side of things, it's a little bit more sort of difficult to see these trends. At the moment in the report, we're showing you sort of overall demographics of your file, so that you can really make a comparison of your file against the sector. So in the example here, I'm looking at a demographic breakdown. I can see from a life stage perspective that my file is much more likely to be within the family life stage compared to some latter life stages or even earlier life stages with the sector as a whole. And I can also see that I'm more inclined to be recruiting from the comfortable sector of society. But we have a number of filters on the left here that enable you to drill down into that. So I can start to look at how that varies in terms of recruitment year on year. So I can drill in and I can take a look at 2019 recruitment, and then I can link that against 2020 recruitment. A little bit harder to see, but it does show an increase on the sector in terms of when I flip to 2020, in terms of the number of retired supporters and those struggling groups. But interestingly, for my fictitious charity, you also see that real family band and comfortable band that I highlighted earlier really coming to the fore in 2019, but actually that's dropped down in 2020. So there's some changes going on there in terms of how I as a charity sort of am recruiting people. And again, I can drill into specific sort of parts of the or products. So I can look at one of donations, or I can look at community fundraising, which I'll focus on here, and you can really see in 2020 quite a spike here in struggling and retired. If I look back and compare that to 2019, you'll see that point I made earlier about those the community fundraising really seeming to engage a different type of audience over that latter half of 2020. So on to my final part of this. So it's been a sort of fairly quick short run through, and then I can see questions coming through, so we can move over to those in a minute. So if I look at contactability, what you'll see here is the overall contactability of the whole file across sort of 4 key methods. So you see your charity here, and immediately you can see how that benchmarks across the sector. So yeah, overall sector percentages are fairly low, and we do see that across a number of charities. My fictitious charity here, I'm doing pretty well. And again, I can use the recruitment year filters here to start to see how that has changed. So if I want to look and specifically see on my 2019 recruits, I can see actually contactability rates for the sector as a whole much better than average. So, you know, we can see here that gathering that information has improved in the sector in recent years, and 2019 in itself is much better than the file as a whole. If I then drop into 2020, I can see that slight drop in email contactability, which I kind of touched on earlier. I can see that within my own charity as well, but it wasn't quite as pronounced as with the sector as a whole. Again, if I look into specific products, that's kind of what I focused on it in the report. If I look at one-off donation, I can see, and I switch back to 2019, I can see email contactability rates of about 35%, but looking into 2020, those have actually gone up. So, you know, that's positive, all that engagement towards the end of the year. A lot of that would have been through digital channels and gathering emails to make sure that we can contact them going into the future. And again, looking at that community fundraising point. So conversely, if I look at them for 2019, I see 70% of the file having that contactability, whereas that drops 2020 down to 15%, so quite a marked drop in there. And similarly with phone going from 26% right down to 7%. So I think that's probably covered a lot of the main points that I wanted to show you today. Those are the things that we've picked out in the report. Obviously, as Josh talked you through earlier, there's a lot more information in these reports that we haven't gone into in terms of around location and other elements of profiling and so on. But I hope you found that useful. We'll be pushing further reports out through the year. This data will be updated on a monthly basis, so we will be releasing information at the beginning of each month for the previous month on some of the key trends and highlights that we see in that month. So look out for those. Thank you. I will now, I think, move over and we'll start reading through some of these questions that are coming in and trying to give you answers.
Okay, so we've had a few questions come through, some more general and some quite specific. So if we don't get round to your question, it's probably just because it's a little bit specific, and we'll contact you directly to talk through it. Just scrolling through. So can you drill down on contactability to expose contactability by product? I think that came in just before you started drilling down into contactability by product.
Yes, exactly. You saw all the, well, briefly you would have seen all the filters on the left-hand side of the reports. All the reports have the ability to drill down in by various factors. So product is the one that I focused on through most of that, but you can look at channel, you can drill down into the demographics of the file and see where you're, you know, are you getting contactability in older generations, in younger generations, and information like that.
Mm-hmm. Someone's asked whether the benchmarking reports cover income streams such as trusts and corporate, as well as individual giving.
They do, yes. Well, you saw a little bit on the high value giving that I showed you there earlier. So there are elements of that we're bringing through, and yeah, you can benchmark and look at those. again, I've focused in the report on the individual giving side of things, as I thought, that's where there's some real interest in going on. But yes, all the information is being gathered, and you can drill down further into those areas.
Mm-hmm. Someone's asked, do we have to take the full set of reports if you were to take up Insight Hub? I guess that means, do you need to purchase every report? I think they're asking.
No, so I think as Josh took you through there earlier, we sort of have bundled up the reports into areas of similar interest. So we've got the overview. All the information that I showed you there comes from the overview bundle, and that would be taken as a whole. We've then got other reports and bundles, the support engagement, which focuses more on regular giving attrition, lifetime value, crossover, and those kind of things. And you would take those as a whole, but you can take bundles individually, and you can also either take the benchmarking element or the we have more detailed individual reports that really focus in on your own data.
Mm-hmm. Someone's asked if you can filter the benchmarking against certain types of charities.
At the moment, that is not functionality that we've got in, but that is something that we will look to do as we expand the number and types of charities that we bring onto the platform. So that, yeah, we would envisage having filters by sector, by cause, by size of charity, those kind of things. So that's certainly in the roadmap.
Mm-hmm. There's a question: do we have to pay each time we load data into Insight Hub?
No, it's done on a annual license basis. Essentially, what we do is we take your data in, we set up an automated pipeline to take that data, and then that can be refreshed in an automated fashion. So there's no sort of charge per refresh. If you're taking your own reports, that refresh can be set up to suit you and your requirements, whether that's weekly, monthly, or even quarterly, if you don't need that data refreshed as quickly. The benchmarking, as I said, we do want to update this on a monthly basis, so that does obviously necessitate everyone taking part in that to be refreshing their data as a minimum on a monthly basis, so that we can make those comparisons. But that's all covered by your annual fee onto the platform.
Cool. So that's all the questions that have come through that probably don't require us going out and speaking to the individuals that have asked them. So if we haven't got around to your question, we will get in touch to pick up on those.
Cool. Okay. Great. Well, thanks all again for attending. Hope you find the report of interest. There's a little bit more in that than they're covered off today. If you do have any questions that come from that, obviously feel free to get in touch with us. And obviously, if you'd like to find out how you can participate in this or get more detailed access to these reports, then we'd be obviously happy to help. And just to reiterate, we'll be sending out a recording of the webinar later in the week. And if you haven't got your sector report, let us know, and we'll make sure we get it out to you as soon as possible.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
So thanks. Yeah, thanks again, and see you all soon.